have been in technology for over 30 years, but not too long ago, I decided to pursue a certification in executive coaching. And I chose a program at a large university in New York City where I'd have the opportunity to work with a large and talented array of professors in a diverse cohort. And I was not disappointed in this regard. I'll never forget the first day of sessions when we had a chance to meet our classmates. We were people from all over the world: Germany, South America, Israel, Japan, Queens. And we ranged by way of profession from counselors and educators to partners in the big name law firms and banking firms and even UN employees. Our professor asked us on that first day to explain what it was that brought us to coaching. And some of my new colleagues gave the most wonderful and altruistic responses. And when it was my turn to answer this question, I gave my public answer too, and then in a regrettable moment of bonding and good feeling and oversharing, I heard myself say, and because I think access to coaching is limited to those senior executives and those few people who are labeled as high potential employees, and I think that's unfair. So I'm going to learn everything there is to know about coaching, and I'm going to go back and I'm going to tell everybody. And I believe I stunned my professor with that intense and profoundly impractical, yet lofty revelation. And she stared hard at me and moved on. The next question our professor put to our class had to do with our individual coaching philosophies. What beliefs did we hold about people, and how would those beliefs inform our coaching practices? Now, my husband, who was taking the training with me, was among the first of the people in the class to have the opportunity to answer this question. And he and the group of people that he had gravitated to were saying lovely things like, I believe that people are inherently fragile yet resilient, and with proper support can achieve everything their hearts desire. It was great. It was like heartwarming stuff. It was like the verbal equivalent of comfort food. And they all seemed like such nice people. I, on the other hand, alone, not invited to any group, seemed like someone who might bite. And when it was my turn to answer this question, I continued on my unplugged, unself-aware, unfortunate rant about equal access to information, and I practically barked at those people. I believe in justice, and not just us. I believe if you know better, you'll do better. So I'm going to learn everything there is to know about coaching, and I'm going to go back and tell everybody. And again, my professor stared at me and at my husband, my poor and apparently fragile husband. She gave me a sympathetic look, and then she asked me to come back at the end of the program and tell her if I still felt the same way. And then she decided to stop asking questions for a while. Over the course of my career, I have had the opportunity to be mentored by generous and successful senior managers and senior executives, and I have been intent on sharing what I've learned from them with the people that I mentor. And it's my observation today that even with formal mentoring programs in place, and even with the raft of international best-selling books that encourage us to lean in and have drive and understand that what got you here won't get you there, even with all of that, the way we practice mentoring today, all of that, whenever I go to a networking or mentoring event, I am still invariably asked the same two questions. How can I find a mentor or a sponsor who can help me with my career? Or second, how can I just let somebody know that I'm out here and willing and capable and ready to do bigger and better things? How can I let people know that I exist? People attending these kinds of events tell me that when times are great economically and the money is flowing, there will be occasionally events like networking events to enable them to meet mentors. However, when times are bad and the money is not flowing, these events are canceled. And if you join the company at the wrong time, you could miss the wave forever. Other people tell me that these events are not really organic, and if you meet somebody at an event like that, they don't really know you. It's not a working relationship, and so they're advised then to continue to ask people out for coffee. Well, if you ask someone out for coffee, they don't know you either, and so they can only offer you generic advice. And how much coffee can you drink anyway? These people say it's the coffee that's keeping them up at night, but it's the system that's keeping them down by day. And so coffee is not the answer. It's because of these two questions and these two comments that I often get that I contend that even with some mentoring programs in place today, the way we practice mentoring, what we offer to the 95 to 97% of employees who man the battle stations in our companies today is insufficient to meet their career needs, and it doesn't even meet the organizational needs of the companies themselves. And it's for this reason that mentoring has to change. Mentoring needs a vocation rotation. So let's pause and think about what it is that we do with companies today. Well, when we have new hires, generally we pause and we identify some 3 to 5% of people when they join a company, and we tag those people as high potential, or let's call them hypos. And those people get to enjoy potentially the executive coaching. They'll have mentors appointed from the senior and leadership team. They'll have rotational assignments, and they'll even have dedicated hypo events. The rest of us, let's call us the meh-pos, they will get a badge. They will get the company t-shirt with the logo on top. We will talk to them about the company value system. We'll advise them on the business conduct guidelines. We'll tell them what we don't want them to do. And if there are enough of them, we'll perhaps have a picnic, and then we'll send them off to their managers and teams. And if there's money, we might have a networking event for them, and occasionally there will be some opportunity for individual training. And for some people, that's it. And that's why some people, the MEPOs, are left with the questions that I mentioned earlier. So I was discussing this imbalance with a colleague recently, and I asserted that the most important change that we can make to a typical mentoring program is to introduce this rotation vocation for every professional hire who walks in the door. Everybody who comes in should get 4 to 5, 6 months assignments in different areas of the business before they settle down to one area for some period of time. And if they do that, they can develop working relationships, real networks based on doing and delivering, and they get to enjoy the reputation that will come from that. And if we do this, I can stop calling those people the MEPOs and refer to them as the all-pos, as in we all have potential. This vocation rotation is going to make those employees valuable to the companies themselves, as in the future they're going to be able to make better informed and integrative and potentially more innovative proposals as they go through the business. Now, my colleague, who was arguing for the defense, shall I say, took the position that there's no reason to do anything extra for these MEPOs. And his argument was, of course, that the training that you were talking about, Regina, is of course very expensive. And after all, the cream will rise to the top. The cream will rise to the top. And he offered, by way of example, this guy. It's hard to argue with that guy. And I'll admit that this guy got me because Einstein, of course, was the patent agent who went on to become the Nobel Prize winner and arguably become the greatest physicist of all time. And he would certainly appear to be the cream who rose to the top. And we all know that cream rises to the top, don't we? Or do we? I am from the state of Vermont, where we concern ourselves greatly with cows and cow fluids. And cows are like the state pet of Vermont. And so I thought I would inquire about this idea of cream rising to the top. And so I consulted the folks over at the Dairy of Journal Science, and I learned that there are a number of important factors related to how and when and even if the cream will rise to the top. And in fact, there is an equation that explains this. Stokes' law. Now, Stokes' law concerns itself with the drag force on a sphere moving through a fluid of a given viscosity at a given speed. You didn't know there was going to be math. Now, if we identify the equation's variables relative to the cream, you can see that the diameter of the fat globules which make up the cream is important, the density difference between the fat and the skim milk is important, gravity is obviously important, and the viscosity of the system is important. Now, here are some things that you could note. The square of the diameter is directly proportional to velocity, so the cream will rise faster if the fat globules which make up the cream are bigger. And this seemed to give some credence to my colleague's idea if we think of the fat globules as talent. However, if we go back, we can also see that viscosity is inversely proportional to velocity. And so the thicker the system, the harder it is for our globules, or our fat globules, or the cream to rise. And I think about this in the context of our metaphor as the corporate system, or the lack of programs in a corporate system making it easy for us to rise. Now, the shape of the container actually matters. A long, thin, narrow container makes the cream rise slower, whereas a shallower container allows the cream to rise faster. And again, in the context of this metaphor, I think of that long, thin container the way I think of those hypos. Only a limited number of people shall pass. It's like a bottleneck or a limiter on talent. If we wanted our cream to rise, why would we wait to see if it will happen? Why wouldn't we just spread our milk out and get a good look at it, right? And help it to rise faster. We're not looking to homogenize it, we're looking to catalyze it. And speaking of catalysts, if we increase the temperature of the system, the density difference between the fat and the skim milk will increase, and thus the viscosity of the solution will decrease, and the cream will rise faster. And do you guys know an easy way to increase the temperature of the system? Body heat, as in add some more bodies to this rotational program and not just limit it to hypos. If we do that, the as yet undiscovered creamy people will rise faster to the benefit of themselves and their organization. Now, as it turns out, Stokes wasn't the only one who was concerned about particle movement through fluids. There was someone else who took an interest in Stokes' work, which he published in 1851. Can you guys remember or think about or imagine who the party might have been? Who took an interest in this work? Einstein. In 1905, Einstein did some work that led to the Stokes-Einstein relation, which is the law that concerns itself with the diffusion of spherical particles through solutions with low Reynolds number. And for those of you who are mechanical engineering majors or mat-sci majors, laminar flow, in other words. Now, I'm not saying that when Einstein did this work that he was concerned with cream rising to the top, but I was impressed about his work and this relationship, and so it was a gift, and I took it. Now, many of you know Einstein's story, that he was a patent agent and that he went on to become a Nobel Prize winner. But what's interesting to me about Al is that he was so incredibly unsuccessful before he became Einstein. and he got to become Einstein because he had a small but useful network to help him get there. Now, when Einstein finished college in 1901, he could not get a teaching assignment, not one useful recommendation from a professor. So there was no rising going on. Einstein was tutoring high school students to make money. It took the father of a very close personal friend, Marcel Grossman, who made a recommendation to get Einstein the job in that Swiss patent office. And while he was in the Swiss patent office, many of you know in 1902, he evaluated patent applications for mechanical devices. Why do I tell you that? Well, according to an Einstein bio, Einstein mastered his job at that patent office. And so as things were going very well for Einstein there, 2 years into his job, he applied for a promotion to patent agent second class. And you can imagine how that might have gone for the creamy Einstein, right? He was denied judo chop. Einstein was told he had to master the principles of mechanical engineering before he could be promoted. Einstein rejected, but he stayed at the patent office because he had limited options. Remember, he had difficulty getting that job. But we don't have to feel bad for Dr. Einstein, right? Because while he was at the patent office, he finished his PhD, and in 1905, he published 4 to 5 seminal works that would go on to change the face of physics forever. And so you can imagine how Einstein's work was treated when he published it in 1905, right? You can imagine, right? He was ignored. Einstein was ignored. It was amazing. It was not until the great Max Planck of quantum theory. You guys remember Max Planck from your high school physics, right? It wasn't until Max Planck made complimentary comments about his work and did some work himself to validate the work of Einstein that Einstein began to get invitations to speak, and then later he moved on to get appointments at universities and leading institutions. In other words, the brilliant, creamy Einstein needed someone influential beyond his own manager to recognize that he was out there, he existed, he had ideas, and he was capable. And it was only with that recognition did we raise the temperature of the system and allow the Einsteinian cream to rise to the top. Now, it will always be true that those folks with a little bit of snap and sparkle and drive and will always be able to call attention to their work. And with good work, then, we'll have more opportunities to rise. But here we have in Einstein a great example of someone who was not able to get recognized or connected, and it was not indicative of the fact that he did not have talent. And so we risk not seeing someone like that soonest at our own business peril. Now, despite this great example in Einstein, there will still be people who will say, this idea is simply too expensive and it cannot be done. So let's pause and think about this for a second. Can you guys think of a profession in which graduates are sent through rotations so that they can be exposed through a broad array of challenges and protocols, and they are known to come out on the other end of that as better practitioners and performers? Any ideas? Medicine, yes. And aren't we glad for that? Let's test the idea. Let's suppose your leg fell off. We don't know why, it's just off. You're not bleeding, you're not dying, so let's just call it an aesthetic. It's an aesthetic thing. So there you are, standing on your one good leg, and you have your now extra leg in your other hand, and maybe you have $1,000 in the other hand, right? And you're told you could save that $1,000 if you go see the cheaper doctor. Cheaper because he or she did not go through those expensive rotations. So what are you gonna do? $1,000 or your leg goes back on in the best possible way. $1,000 or your leg. I clearly got to choose my leg. So look, we could stick with the status quo and not invest more in those all polls if the pool of high potential employees were sufficient to meet the leadership needs of our companies for the future. And yet, there is data from a 2013 UNC Keenan-Flagler Business School survey of HR talent management professionals which refutes this idea. And by the way, it's not just new employees who say they're missing out. Longer-term employees say that they don't know about or they can't get jobs that are out there because they've always been in here, in accounting or in finance or in operations or wherever they've been, and their network is only in that one area, in that one division, on that one site. And they don't have a Max Planck to speak on their behalf. So, there's only one way to know for sure if my rotation instigation is going to work. We have to test this idea. And so, class of 2014, this starts with you. If you want this rotation activation, you've got to ask for it, all of you, because it's unlikely to come from anywhere else. And by the way, if you need any more convincing, someone else near and dear to us did some terrific work related to this topic. Can you all guess who it is? Einstein? Shawn Achor. Why did you guys think it was going to be Einstein? Dr. Achor did a TED Talk a few years ago, and I'll invite you to take a look at Dr. Achor's work on your own time, and more specifically, look at the correlation between social cohesion and the belief that your behavior matters. Look at that correlation to employee engagement, employee promotability, company profitability. Take a look at that on your own time. I'm going to leave you by admitting, for my professor, that I have come to learn that it's not true if you know better, you'll do better. You'll always choose to do what you want to do. But it is also true, it's more true, I'll say, that if you know better and you are known better, then you can do better for the benefit of yourself and for your company. And it doesn't take an Einstein to see that. Thank you.